From the Lever's reader-supported newsroom, this is Lever Time. I'm David Sirota. If you're a parent, you know what it means to worry. I know that feeling. I worry about my kids all the time, about basically everything. But what happens when that worry spirals completely out of control and takes a chokehold on our society? Today on Lever Time, I'm going to tell you about how an internal family debate in the Sirota household about my son's dream bicycle triggered a descent into parental angst. One that made me realize I'm hardly alone in my confusion about the balance between good parenting and overparenting. In this crazy, chaotic society, how do we keep our kids safe and healthy? What does safe and healthy actually mean? And how much freedom should kids have when the world seems so out of control these days? To better understand this, I spoke with someone who had to answer those questions head-on when the internet labeled her the world's worst parent. That's all coming up on today's episode. I grew up in Philadelphia, and one of my favorite memories from childhood was the first time I was able to take the Broad Street subway by myself to go watch a Phillies game. It was exhilarating. I was only 14 or 15 years old, but I boarded the subway feeling like an adult. The subway line took me across the city, through gritty North Philadelphia, then through Center City, and all the way down to South Philly. I remember the thrill of entering Veterans Stadium without my parents, just me and my friends, ready for a day of soft pretzels in the 700 level, the nosebleed section of the stadium. For maybe the first time, I felt like an autonomous person, that I could be out in the world and survive on my own. I didn't need adults coddling me or telling me how to do things. Back here in 2025, I think about that time and it feels really far away. And not just because I turned 50 recently, but because of things like this.
Skechers is making a kid's shoe with a hidden compartment for an AirTag. This means parents can keep better tabs on their child's location.
If your child, God forbid, is in an accident, the watch can automatically contact emergency services and also notify you.
King's 3-year-old daughter, Kella, wears the tracking device as a bracelet, mostly in crowded areas.
It does help me feel more in control of the situation, and as a parent, my top priority is her safety.
I have 2 kids, one a tween, one a full-fledged teen. I worry about them when they're out in the world like any parent. But I can't help but feel that all these new gadgets to track our kids, all the societal pressure to buy every product that promises to make you a better parent, and all the shame when another parent pulls out some fancy new app that you don't use, well, I have this feeling it can all end up going way too far. I have to wonder, are we creating problems that weren't there in the first place? And are these problems not just for the kids, but for the parents who are being taught to worry about everything? Let me give you an example. My older son, the teenager, he's been asking for an e-bike for months. It set off a cascade of anxiety for me. Is an e-bike safe? How much less safe is an e-bike than a regular bike? How fast will it go? Is there a speed limiter on it? What prevents my son from finding a way to get around any kind of speed limiter? Am I a terrible parent if I get him one? If I am a terrible parent, why do so many other kids have e-bikes? Am I a terrible parent if I don't get him an e-bike? I handled the situation by doing what I know best. I went full investigative journalist. I went so far down the rabbit hole that I was emailing major e-bike manufacturers with detailed questions. There didn't seem to be standard answers to anything. One company assured me that their bikes didn't go more than 20 miles an hour, but I discovered that the instruction manual online explained how to raise the speed limit. When I asked about this, the e-bike company then took it off its website, saying it shouldn't be on there. Damn right it shouldn't be on there. Getting that company to change their instruction manual felt like a big personal win for me and for other parents. But then I pivoted to a new worry, the range. How far away from home would my son be able to go with an e-bike? How far is too far? What if the battery runs out in the middle of nowhere and he can't get home? What if he ends up in the plot of Adventures in Babysitting, but Elizabeth Shue isn't there to protect him?
Excuse me. I couldn't help but notice that you two groups of people are about to start killing each other, and I was wondering if you could please just wait on that until we could get off the train.
I went on and on this way for months. I was an anxious mess. But then I started wondering, have parents always been this anxious? One answer is yes. Parental worry is so innate and so timeless that it's now a Hollywood punchline. Parental worry was the entire mom character from that classic film Almost Famous.
Don't take drugs!
Then again, that worried 1970s mom in Almost Famous did let her teenage son go on the road with a rock band to write about them for a magazine. And that film is based on a true story. The movie's writer and director, Cameron Crowe, went on tour with Led Zeppelin and the Allman Brothers, writing for Rolling Stone when he was only 16 years old. Now, that's not exactly a normal situation, but it's still a reflection of different, looser attitudes of the past, a time before the era of surveillance-powered helicopter parenting. I mean, I didn't tour with a rock band when I was a teenager in the 1980s, but my parents did trust me enough that I was allowed to ride my bike down the street and get candy from the gas station, and my parents knew I'd eventually come home. That's not necessarily the case for many kids today. So how did we get to this era of helicopter parenting from the days when we could let our kids walk to school on their own or run over to the neighbor's yard to play? When did we get so bogged down by this idea that something bad could happen to them? My son's quest for an e-bike had me struggling with these big questions. The potential danger was clear, but was I being too much of a helicopter parent? What's the right balance here? Just when I thought I might implode with worry, I received a message from an old colleague who was visiting Denver and wanted to meet up.
I'm Lenore Skenazy. I'm the president of Let Grow, nonprofit that promotes childhood independence. And I wrote the book Free Range Kids.
Lenore and I have known each other for almost 2 decades now. I knew her back in the day as a columnist for the New York Daily News. But the internet may know her as the person who was momentarily cast as the world's worst mom.
I got bumped up to world's worst mom after a few years of just being America's worst
Oh, okay,
mom.
congratulations.
Thank you.
You've gone
I
global.
worked hard, ceaselessly.
Lenore made headlines back in 2008 when she wrote a newspaper column about how she let her 9-year-old son ride the New York City subway by himself.
He was asking us if we would take him someplace he'd never been before in New York City where we live and let him find his own way home by subway. That was his dearest wish. We decided yes. We let him ride the subway home one day from Bloomingdale's department store.
Once her column was published, all hell broke loose.
2 days later, I was on the Today Show, MSNBC, Fox News, and NPR, being castigated for not caring about my son, and I got that name.
Parent shaming is not a new phenomenon. It's been around as long as, well, parents have been around. But social media has made public shaming louder and easier. Folks on social media just love to jump on the bandwagon against bad parenting. You don't even need to have a kid to have an opinion. Anything from too much screen time to letting your kid eat fast food is up for grabs. But what stuck with Lenore about her viral worst mom moment was not the amount of parent shaming for something pretty straightforward. It was how little people seemed to trust strangers and their own kids. So many people seemed to assume that Lenore was recklessly signing her 9-year-old up to get kidnapped by simply letting him ride the subway.
I started hearing about how very little kids are allowed to do now. And I was shocked because as a reporter, all I did was travel around New York City and meet people and talk to them. And I was never covering crime. I was always just covering cool, interesting stories. And the disconnect between what I was seeing, which was day-to-day reality, people being generally nice, and kids being generally smart and competent, and not thinking that kids can do anything.
The Harris Poll recently conducted a study with Jonathan Haidt. He's the author of the best-selling book, The Anxious Generation, and a co-founder of Let Grow, Lenore's nonprofit organization. The study interviewed more than 500 kids between the ages of 8 and 12 years old and asked them what they're allowed to do on their own. The takeaways from the poll were staggering. It showed that the majority of American children haven't walked around their neighborhood on their own. More than half of the children said that they have never even walked in a different aisle than their parents at a store.
That's really sad because it's very safe to go to another aisle at the store. There's other people, there's cameras, there's you, and there's your child with their own brains and know-how and ability to ask questions and talk to people. And to think that they can't even do that to do that is too dangerous or you're too terrible a parent if you let them go, is disturbing to me, because that's almost not seeing your kids, our kids in general, as competent little humans.
When I was a kid, I was fairly off-leash. My parents would drop me off at the local Del Ennis bowling lanes for hours. From there, my friends and I would sometimes walk over to the local pool hall or the 7-Eleven. When I wanted to come home, I'd make a collect call to my mom from a payphone. Sometimes she wouldn't even accept the charges because we had a little code that if she got a collect call from me, she'd know to come pick me up back at the bowling alley. Would I let my kids do the same today? Yeah, I would. But I might worry a little about them getting kidnapped. What are the odds of a child getting kidnapped on the streets? Lenore asked a researcher in England to crunch those numbers.
If for some reason you wanted your kid to be kidnapped by a stranger in what's called a stereotypical kidnapping, like Law and Order, how long would you have to keep them outside unattended, you're not there, for this to be statistically likely that they would be kidnapped?
Like if you just put them out?
Put them outside. Put them at the bus stop.
I don't know, like 5 years.
I hear a chuckle from the producers here.
10
I'm
years.
just going to ask you guys, what do you guys think? How long?
I don't know, like a couple years.
Well, it's amazing you say 5 or even 10 years, because most people think it's like 5 hours, and some people go wild and say 5 days. But the answer is, number crunched for me by a guy in England, 750,000 years. Okay.
So back to like the woolly mammoths.
Yeah. And if the woolly mammoths were here, I would keep my kids inside.
The odds of getting kidnapped are about 1 in 720,000. For comparison, here in Colorado, that means they're more likely to be struck by lightning. So why do I and so many other parents my age still worry about kidnapping? What's the origin story of all that fear? When we come back, we dive into the nightmare tale of the kid who got kidnapped and murdered, the dad who became the host of America's Most Wanted, and all those kids' faces on milk cartons. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Lever Time.
It's been a frustrating 5 days since 6-year-old Adam Walsh was last seen. His disappearance has prompted community-wide concern in South Broward.
In 1981, when I was in elementary school, I remember this story all over the news. Everyone was talking about it. It was about a little boy named Adam Walsh who had been kidnapped at a Sears department store in Florida.
We've searched and searched for Adam, and we haven't found a body, so everybody thinks he's alive. We do too.
Adam had been playing video games in the store a few aisles over from his parents, and then he vanished. 2 weeks later, his severed head was found in a ditch. His body was never recovered. It's a totally horrific story. As a parent, or just as a human being, you can't help but be shocked to your core.
He became literally the poster child for missing children. And then by 84, there were pictures on the milk cartons of missing children. And the carton said something like, "Have you seen me?"
Noticing the public's reaction, the media latched on. They made TV shows and documentaries about missing kids. Abducted children became household names. Adam Walsh, Johnny Gosch, Yusuf Bell. Adam Walsh's dad started a hit TV show called America's Most Wanted, focused on finding fugitives and missing kids. The fear that kids were getting snatched off the street was everywhere in the media. It was a 1980s fad, the missing children panic. And that panic became a big part of politics, too.
Every year in this country, thousands of children disappear from their homes. The Missing Children Act will reassure parents that every effort is being made to find, or in more tragic circumstances, to identify their children.
That's former President Ronald Reagan signing the Omnibus Victims Protection and Missing Children's Act in the Rose Garden on October 12, 1982. The following year, Ronald Reagan declared National Missing Children's Day. This panic about children being snatched off the streets was an easy recipe for justifying Reagan's tough-on-crime policies and crueler punishments, the skeleton of a beast that would quickly become mass incarceration. But what people were seeing in the media and on their milk cartons wasn't the whole picture.
You're eating your Frosted Flakes and you're looking at a kid and you're thinking, that could be me. And it never explained that the vast majority of these kids were taken in custodial disputes between warring divorced parents, or sometimes they were runaways.
If you listened to our conversation with Alec Karakatsanis earlier this year, you'll remember our discussion about how the fear of crime has increased even as crime rates have decreased. It's sort of the same thing when it comes to children. We're not always rational about the data, but Lenore believes there's another path, one that's better for parents, better for kids, and better for our society. That's after the break. Welcome back to Lever Time. Parenting is ultimately an exercise in control and guidance. You have to try to know when your kids are ready for independence. You have to try to know when to grant it to them. You have to try to know when to intervene. You have to know that your control is limited and that it dwindles as they grow older. But when you spend so much of their life protecting them, it can be hard to change. I asked Lenore what she's found to be the most effective way of getting through to parents.
The only thing that I've seen that changes parents is them being nudged to actually let go of their kids for a short amount of time, have them out of their sight, doing something in the real world, and it could be even in the kitchen, making the cookies and taking them out of the oven with their oven mitts and without mom there, making the pancakes, scrambling the egg, or walking to the store, or climbing the tree. When a child does something on their own, the same fear that has colonized the parent's brain turns into whoosh. Look at my kid. Oh my God, this is the most delicious breakfast I've ever had. Oh, thank you. You got Kool-Aid. I was hoping you'd get Kool-Aid. This is great. Oh, you got lost and oh, you met a dog and then you got home. Parents are hardwired, as hardwired as they are to worry, they are hardwired to feel this grateful exultation when their kid goes to a new stage. And you know it yourself because when your kid went from crawling to toddling, your heart welled up.
But letting kids go is easier said than done, and timing is everything. For instance, in my own personal life, how do I know if the time is right to let my kid have an e-bike, which my brain equates with a motorcycle, which it also equates with, God forbid, a terrible accident? I don't want to be a helicopter parent,
right?
But I'm not sure I want my kid to have an e-bike.
Mm-hmm.
Am I being a helicopter parent by not letting my kids save up? He's got he's working a couple jobs
he's
around
working.
town. Yeah,
all right. So he's proven himself responsible.
He's shoveling snow and pressure washing and all this.
Yeah.
Right. He's trying to scrounge it together. And I'm like, I don't want to be a helicopter parent. But I also am not sure I'm comfortable. I'm fine with him being autonomous in the world at a certain
but
level,
not
not on it. Where do we how do you think about that? Not the specific e-bike question,
your son, when he's 14 and 17 months.
Yeah.
I don't really know. I have to admit that to a certain extent you can default to the law, right? In America, most kids can get their licenses at 16 or 17. And so you're not going to have them, Dad, I want a car. Well, you're 13.
Right, but that scares the shit out of me.
Oh, it scares the shit out of me too. And my kids are in their late 20s. Oh my God.
Right, driving, I have a child who's going to drive around.
Wait a minute. So, David, are you waiting for the day you don't have to worry about your kids?
That's the problem.
Yeah.
I am waiting for
Have you heard of the grave?
Right. So, I just have to, I think what you're saying is you because my parents faced when should we let
all parents
our kids
face everything.
Right,
is this the right person to marry? Have they gone to the right place? Are they eating the right food? He seems depressed. There's no escape from where you have a kid and you're going to worry about them because you love them more than anything on earth.
Right.
And there is no correct answer.
Right.
It's not like, David, I'm glad you asked. An e-bike should not be ridden until a child has passed this test and this eye test and the
You're still going to
coordination
be nervous.
test.
Yeah. Well,
So that's the big change. It's like, do you think you can have kids and not worry?
Right.
Because that's an unfair burden on the kid. I mean, like, how are you going to have a kid that's perfectly safe? You're not going to allow them to do anything. They're going to be growing up in a safe room, and you don't have to worry, and they're growing up in a rubber room because they're a person. You have to deal with your fear, and they have to live their life. And I'm not saying to be heedless, and I think we've established that.
For sure.
But there's something also great about them becoming comfortable in the world, even becoming a good bike rider. You can't become a good bike rider riding a stationary bike, right? You have to be out in the world and realize, I got to brake fast. There's a dog coming, or look both ways before crossing the street. They need some real world exposure to be safe in the real world.
I ended up speaking to Lenore for almost an hour about how she developed her parenting philosophy, how to protect kids from social media, and so much more. We're publishing that full conversation as a bonus episode in our premium feed for our paid subscribers. There's a link to that in our show notes. The worried voice in my mind is still loud, but after talking with Lenore, I came to agree with much of what she's saying. I know my son is ready for a new stage, and I know my wife and I are ready for a new stage. And so after all that anxiety and all those months of exhaustive research, a few days ago, we got my son that birthday present he wanted, the e-bike he's been dreaming of. It's got the speed limiter, and he's promised to wear the helmet at all times, so I feel good about that. But then, of course, the bike arrived at our house literally on the same day as a really scary New York Times Magazine story about a horrific e-bike accident and the dangers of this new technology. I read that article, and the anxiety voice in my mind told me to lock up my son's bike for a while and not let him have it or use it. But the thing is, I know I can't lock it up forever, so we're not doing that. He's gonna ride it. I'm still gonna make sure he's following some really serious rules, but we're letting him have that bike because I know in my heart that our kids do deserve to roam free in a world that belongs to them. Thanks for listening to another episode of Lever Time. Lever Time is a production of The Lever. This episode was produced by Natalie Bettendorf. It was edited and mixed by Ron Doyle. You can subscribe to Lever Time on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. Remember, for ad-free episodes, exclusive bonus content, and access to The Lever's entire archive of investigative journalism, please consider becoming a premium subscriber. Head over to levernews.com to learn more about becoming a paid subscriber, or click the link in this episode's show notes. I'm David Sirota. We'll be back next week with another episode of Lever Time.